All right, today we are going to go over how to calculate slope. So I am going to start ArcGIS Pro. Mine already has it as a option right there. Yours you might have to click through. That's okay. So go ahead and open ArcGIS Pro and wait for the opening page to appear. When it does, you're going to want to open the file that you've already created. APRX is the file extension. And maybe yours is already here. If it isn't, you can go up here to open another project, navigate to your drive, go to your CE352 Project 1 folder, and your file should be somewhere in here. And mine was hidden in another file. If you don't see yours, you can always click through and see if you can find it. If you have troubles finding it, let me know. So at this point, I've added a bunch of data, I've visualized a bunch of data, and I have some of that information shown here. But today we want to get after calculating slope. So you're going to find your filled DEM file. I'm going to turn it on. And so I can see it, I'm going to drag it upwards in the hierarchy. I want to calculate slope. So I'm going to go over here to toolboxes. If tools isn't there, remember it's always under analysis and then tools. I'm going to go down to spatial analyst. Anytime we're doing spatial data, it's going to be in that spatial analyst folder. And now I'm going to go down to surface. And there's a bunch of different options for creating a surface. You can do some cool things. You can make contours, you can get aspect information, hill shades, which are a really neat way to show shading of your DEM. But we care about slope. So let's click on slope. You're going to find your filled DEM, and that's what you're using as input. And you're going to change this just to slope. And I'm going to name it slope per. And you might be thinking per, oh, that probably stands for percent. You would be right. Under output measurement, I can have the slope reported as a degree, but I want it as a percent rise. The method of planar is totally fine. This just depends on how it takes into account the curvature, whether or not it takes into account the curvature of the Earth. And the Z factor is something we can use to accentuate slope, but we're keeping that as 1. So I'm going to run this, and it's going to take a little bit to run, so I'm going to pause it and then return. So my slope analysis has just finished completing, and it gave me some warnings. The Z factor is 1, that's fine. And I'm going to close that, and I'm going to zoom in. So what you can see is lighter colors are flatter slopes, and darker colors are higher slopes. And so we see those a lot of times along the rivers, depending on sort of what landforms you have. This is the Bushkill, and so we have a ridge up here, which is why you can see those high slopes. So this is useful, but we want to be able to see specific slopes. We want to be able to see steep slopes, very steep slopes, and severely steep slopes. And I outline the percentages on your project sheet. So I encourage you to look back at that. But how do you get this to show those divisions? To do that, I'm going to go to raster layer, and I'm going to click on symbology. And this allows me to create settings that I like for each of those groups. So it's stuck at a set of 11 groups, and it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go to equal interval, and I'm going to reset this, and I'm going to make mine 6 just for funsies. Really doesn't matter. And then I'm going to go back to manual interval. And I can go through and set these values to be values that I want. So anything less than 10%. Anything less than between 10 and 25%. So you can actually click on these values and change the numbers. We have some very steep slopes in this watershed. They probably constitute a very small percentage of the watershed. I would say think about where you want those divisions to be. look at that project one description to see what intervals you definitely want to visualize on there. And play around with this, and then you are including a screenshot that shows me how you broke things up. All right, that is how we work with slopes in ArcGIS Pro.